Being on around 7 p.m. on the 24th of March, 2022. Planning board meeting will come to order. Paige, you want to walk us through your planner's report?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. So we, this week we met, Planning and DPW met to start working on a proposed parking plan for Uptown. As I've described before, I think that we want to make sure there's short-term designated parking, long-term designated parking, as people start moving uptown and Shoveltown begins to open. So we do have, I saw Ryan Norton from our GS department put together a preliminary map. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but we're starting with that. The plan is to kind of come up with a proposal, bring it to the police department, sort of get their input, and then bring it to the selectmen and start a public discussion about it. You know, we know now, we've learned when it comes to Uptown, it's best to introduce something, make sure there's plenty of time for conversation and input, and then, you know, we're hoping that in midsummer or so we have a somewhat of a plan with areas designated, and so we could start advertising that or putting out, you know, an app or some sort of social media post that, you know, and then Shoveltown could use it, the theater can use it, and other businesses can actually use this information to help guide, particularly out-of-town residents, know where to go. So, Jeff, did you have something?
Just, who's the Shoveltown guy that is in charge? Which one is that?
Frank Altieri.
Frank, right. So I should probably talk to him because over at Bethany, we were just kind of internally having some conversations, and we probably can do something there.
That's great.
Sort of dedicated, you know, not, I don't know, could be as much as 15 or 20 spaces.
That'd be great. So we'll maybe loop you into a conversation with us.
Well, I mean, that could be, that could even be a permanent situation, because, you know, the thing is that, just like with the Orpheum, you know, it's gonna be, other than employees, it's gonna be a tough go to get customers to park down there or over here.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's probably not gonna happen. I mean, it might, but on a low volume.
On the regular, right?
Right. So, just, you know,
Have him get in touch with you, or maybe I'll talk to Sam Schofield first, because they're the owners of the land, so maybe if you wanted to make it somewhat semi-formal, you know.
well,
then he might be
I'm
the
thinking
person.
we might.
Yeah, okay, so I'll talk to Sam, and then if he wants to talk to you, I'll put you in touch with Frank. That would be great.
That's great. And as a side note, one thing that came up this week is Gabby had to assign a new address for the fire station project because it's been identified as 40 School Street, but through all the GIS and everything, it's been programmed that anything goes to 40 School Street goes to Public Safety Building. And so all the deliveries and whatnot, they get rerouted to the Public Safety Building. So they asked, rather than change it, so now they're going to be 42.
44.
Oh, 44? Okay,
Yes.
44. And so just FYI, that's first we thought it was a big deal, and then we started looking into it, and it was like, rather than making a mountain out of a mole, because I was like, change GIS. And I was like, okay, change the address. We'll just pick the easier path.
So that'll apply to the apartments upstairs as well, correct?
Yes, yes. So then that way, there's just no historical confusion.
Right.
You know, yeah. So that, stay tuned for that. It will, like I say, anybody watching from home, there will be a public, obviously a very large public component in the discussion like there is on anything uptown. Walnut Street Affordable Housing Project, exciting news is that FHA has chosen a developer. I don't know that it's being announced publicly just because they want to, you know, make sure they get far enough along with the first one before they let the second one know. But they did choose last week. It was a rather clear choice. There was no split vote or whatnot, so that's exciting, and we're moving towards that project. Again, we still think it'll be years before anything happens, but we are also working with Congressman Auchincloss to make sure that the Walnut Street signal gets funded. We're doing the steps. We're working with Mass DOT District 5. We've now learned we have to get on the STIP, which isn't the tip. So we're getting on the STIP, but it seems like District 5 is all over that. They had reached out to me and actually offered to work with us on this because they know it's their intersection, and that they also know the town has done a great job designing their intersection. using state money, though, so before you get freaked out about that. But still, we did their job, so now it's been working out well. Now, I think they're willing to work with us for this STIP, which will then hopefully help us with Auchincloss. But, so we're working on all those different funding opportunities. I'll be presenting to the Board of Selectmen about the housing choice on April 12th. And then with the April 7th special meeting, we do have three meetings scheduled for April 7th, April 14th, and April 28th. We would have liked to have canceled one, but just with the marijuana bylaw, we just didn't feel we could cancel the 14th and push that till the 28th. And then on the 28th, we'll have to wait and see, but we do know that there might be a couple applications, so we can decide, but just a heads up. And then in May 26th, I won't be here. I'll be in Venice.
I won't be here on the 28th. I'll be in the Outer Banks.
Okay, cool.
But I will be here on the 7th because my business trip
On
got
the
canceled.
7th, okay. And then Gabby is going to be on vacation starting tomorrow until April 5th. Well-deserved vacation.
To Venice?
No, I tried to send her somewhere. I'm not sure what she's doing.
To Foxvale.
But hopefully she'll get a little time off to rest and recover after all the hard work she did while I was gone. And so I'll be on vacation from May 16th to May 27th. And that's all I have.
Okay, so unfortunately, because my computer's down, I do not have an agenda in front of me, so
You want me to?
Paige, if you want to just let me know what the next item is and where you want to go.
Sure. Tracy, go ahead. You do.
Let me go ahead. Next is active subdivisions, Kevin.
I don't have any report, sorry.
No report, Kevin.
Next.
Okay?
Meeting minutes from March 10th, 2022 that have already been sent out.
Yep, I read those. I motion to approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. Oh, Jeff, aye.
Tom, aye.
Tracy, aye.
Gary, aye.
Kevin, I.
And then at the end of the meeting, if we haven't done so already, we need to sign 2 sets of Mylars for Miss Jordan. And then
We have
Any-
to kill some time.
we need to kill some time.
Well, I can sign then.
Oh, yeah, you could sign some.
If people, yeah.
So our next public hearing is at
Hearing's
7:15. So we have to wait till that starts. Let me think. Do I have any updates beyond?
Can I ask I'll ask a question for kill time. Is there a reason this end of the common did not get the same built thing? It has the red spot on the ground to help direct traffic. Well, the other one has like curving.
Yeah, an island.
Yes?
Why did we do that?
For tractor trailers and plows and buses,
Why didn't we have to do that at the other end?
because it's a different geometry. I don't think, you don't have the same swing. Again, now I'm making this up somewhat based on my limited knowledge of now that I'm thinking about it. I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I've been talking about it enough, I feel like I do. But I do believe it was geometry based, and up there, they were trying really hard not to have anything, that came up to interfere with plowing or that sort of thing. We are aware that it's not
Working.
It's not aggressive.
functioning,
It's not
right?
aggressive enough, no.
I know, and
How
so,
about putting some of those yellow sticky things that are on like Route 6 on the
Yeah.
Cape?
we might have to do that, yeah. We were
it's
trying to
not-
do, because people, don't really like to see garish things on the common, we were trying to do it as low profile and keep it and we were hoping folks would learn how to drive. Not gonna happen, so we're probably gonna have to look at a little more,
Just something so it scares them when they go over it.
Right.
They think twice the next time.
yeah. But yeah, it's a bit frustrating. So,
Okay, anybody else got anything? That was my thing.
I'm giving a speech to the Rotary Club Monday night.
About what?
What's your topic?
Good question. I'm working on that Monday. No, I think it's just gonna be mostly an update, uptown, all the things going on in business and around here, so mostly that. People, you all kind of get my biweekly updates, but most residents, I think, don't necessarily always know all the exciting stuff going on, so. Because we have been actually doing a lot of coordination just behind the scenes, and like now there's something called an Uptown Coordination Team. So like we have a way, there's Facebook, and there's also someone creating a calendar so that like, for example, the JCs and the Foxborough Common Business Collaborative, and then, the Rotary, they all know the different events that are going to go on uptown or whatever, so there could start to be coordinated approaches to, planning. For example, I know there's a car show planned in July, I think by the Rotary, by the Lions, I don't know, somebody, they're going to be in trouble for that one, JCs. And, we want to try to have other entities do activities and same to complement. So it's kind of cool. So there's been a lot of coordination going. On Monday, I should have mentioned on Monday, we, Jay Barrows, Leah Gibson, Bill Keegan, and I walked Heather Harding, we all walked the Central Street parking lot and started looking at ways, we're starting to see if we can get funding, whether it's through ARPA or some of the, federal funds that are out there to start help figuring out how to improve that Central Street parking lot, because it's being a lot more used now that we have the wayfinding signs out, so we're finding that it's crowded a lot, which is good, but, it's never enough. But we also have, while we're walking out there's a car out there with no license plates on, so it was kind of funny, because when you're out with Bill Keegan, apparently he saw that and he texted the police chief, and before we even left the parking lot, there was a cruiser pulling up and taking care of that car with no plates. So, we've heard reports of trailers being left out there a long time, so we're trying to find a way to start to maybe streamline some of that. I think we're going to be, hopefully, I know Jay Barris wants to initiate that as a business owner. I'm sorry, Cindy was there too, Cindy and Steve from the Jewelers, we were also there, started talking about maybe we could get the group to combine their dumpsters and have, one row of dumpsters in one area rather than, we counted 13 dumpsters out there. Every business has their own, they might have two. They're kind of, the geometry out there is weird anyway. So we have poles, which again, that would probably take an act of Congress to get the poles moved, but we'll see. So there may be, I did ask Bill if he'd be willing, because of the base plan that was done on that, it was a Bay Colony plan, so poor Bill is like, will you help me look at this and see? And I'm sure as much was done with what we had then, but if perhaps we designate areas for dumpsters and we find ways to try to improve that situation, we can kind of upgrade it a bit.
Where is the access to Central Street?
There is, there's that one.
Other than the road up near the corner of the common.
Yeah, there
road.
isn't. I mean, on Wall Street or
I thought,
Cohasset.
isn't there an alleyway?
There is.
There's an alley.
Oh, yeah, there's an alley, but I thought you meant vehicular, sorry. Yeah.
No, not
No, there
the-
is.
Alley goes by
Vehicular one.
Foxboro Cable.
So I do think that for that area to be practically used, the town would almost need to
Pretty it up.
pretty it up. And
Yes,
sign
we
it
agree.
up,
And we're looking at it. In fact,
There-
we've
but
even
I'm-
looked at, and again, it's premature, but like the rapid recovery plan that was done this summer, it showed that vehicular access point, which is actually really dangerous right at the
Right.
top there.
Oh, yeah.
We're considering, and again, nothing's been vetted, it's just pictures, but we're considering whether we could propose to turn that into sort of outdoor dining amenity, like close that off. And, but again, we haven't talked with any stakeholders, it's not any,
Who
trying to
owns-
find ways
who
to
owns
make
that?
that, the town owns it,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh,
As
yeah.
far as we could tell, I believe, I checked with Chris Gallagher and the assessors, and we own that. So it's just an idea of trying to elevate it, because, we have the great common, but, down by some of the restaurants, there's not a whole lot of places to sit. I hear there used to be benches across from Cindy's, you could like grab something to eat and go sit. There's really not a lot of that. We were talking about asking Foxborough Federal if they'd let us put a picnic table on their, the corner up here, trying to just find ways to activate some of these spaces, because people really want to hang outside.
Cool.
All right, I did it. It's now
Good job.
7:15.
Good job, Paige.
Filibustered.
Kevin? Do you want me to
Yes.
open the public hearing?
I would if I knew what the public hearing was about.
Okay, I'll
Like-
open the public hearing. At or about 7:15 PM, opening the public hearing, site plan review for 11 Springbrook Road, construction of a 30,000 square foot office warehouse building, G Green Properties LLC.
Thank you.
Welcome. Mr. Buckley?
So, good evening, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Cameron Gray. I'm here tonight with Betsy DeShulo and Bill Buckley, and we're representing our client G Green Properties to discuss the site plan at 11 Springbrook Road. 11 Springbrook Road was created as part of the Cocasset Commercial Center subdivision, which was approved by the Foxborough Planning Board in August of 1989. The industrial subdivision consists of 7 lots located off of East Belcher Road. 11 Springbrook Road is located at the end of the road in the cul-de-sac, and it's the last lot to be developed in the subdivision. This property is located within the limited industrial zoning district and borders the residential agricultural R40 zoning district to the east. So there are commercial properties to the north and west of 11 Springbrook. The Foxborough landfill is located to the east of the property, and a residential home is located to the northeast of the property. When the subdivision was originally designed in 1989, all the utilities, including municipal water, municipal gas, and drainage, were run up the roadway and stubbed at the front of each lot. The drainage was developed to collect and transport the runoff from each lot to the retention basin located at the entrance of the subdivision on Lot 7. The basin was designed under the assumption that each lot would be built out to the maximum 70% impervious. Springbrook Road was accepted by the town in 2003. This property also contains a habitat of rare wildlife as defined by the National Heritage and Endangered Species Program. Our client has taken the necessary steps and hired Oxbow Associates to ensure the project complies. A MESA permit has been issued for this project, and a condition of that permit requires the eastern portion of the property remain undeveloped. So we're proposing the construction of a 30,000 square foot facility. So it'll act as a warehouse with garage doors will provide access to the building on the northern, eastern, and southern side of the property, or I'm sorry, of the building. This building can be built out to provide up to 20 individual contractor bays, and the proposed facility will be 1 story. We have architectural renderings, which I've included in the packet that I handed out to everyone, and we also have some right here. So the building will match the characteristics of the surrounding facilities in that subdivision. For the building, we assume that 5% of the building will be office space, with the remainder of the building being warehouse. So a total of 26 parking spaces will be provided, and they can be seen to the west of the building and to the south there. So access to the site will be through the existing curb cut on Springbrook Road in the cul-de-sac. And we have provided landscaping buffers along the northern and southern property lines. It should also be noted that on the original subdivision plan, a 50-foot buffer was shown along the eastern portion of the property that abuts that R40 zoning district. We have provided a 65-foot buffer, which will remain undisturbed. This site will be serviced by a conventional septic system, which will be located to the west of the building under the proposed parking area. The on-site stormwater management will consist of roof drainage, parking lot drainage, and the on-site stormwater management will be connected to the existing 18-inch stub located in the cul-de-sac there. So the rate of runoff will be controlled by the existing subdivision drainage. And as I stated before, that subdivision drainage been designed so that each lot would be built to the 70% max impervious. And this site will be approximately 70% impervious, so it still holds. On-site runoff for the parking area will be captured and treated in tree box filters, which will be located throughout the property, and they will be conveyed to deep sump catch basins. A portion of that parking area runoff and all of the roof runoff will be conveyed to the subsurface infiltration system, which you can see there located to the south of the building. And we have received the comment from the board's consultants, are in the process of working through them. That concludes my presentation. I'd like to open up for any questions.
Is it your anticipation that every unit would have an office component, or would there be segregated office, or a mix of both?
So on the architectural plans, it's assumed that we'll have some office space, but we don't have a tenant for the facility yet, so I don't know if it'll be the 20 individual contractor bays, or if it could just be warehouse with no walls.
Can I ask a question just out of the audience? I'm in a butter.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I just didn't know that.
No worries.
Oh, thank you.
No, well, you'll definitely have your chance.
Are you looking for any waivers for this at all?
No.
Nothing?
Though it's so weird not to have you talk.
Is there enough frontage there?
You only need 50 feet of frontage.
Oh, it's only 50 there? Okay.
Any other questions?
Not right at the moment.
Kevin, any questions?
Yes, Cameron, is the owner thinking that they're going to try to lease it as a single space and the fallback will be the independent bays, or is it the other way around?
So in my discussions with the owner, Kevin, a while ago, is he's hoping to have one owner. And he has one in mind, which I can't talk about, but,
Right.
But it is set up to have flexibility. You can see that there's 10 or 20 doors on it, so that you could have as many as that individual tenants, but I don't think that's the preference.
Okay. And so the total, including the proposed office space on the plan, is approximately 30,000 square feet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Could this ever be a terminal, trucking terminal?
In my opinion, no, because there's, in a truck terminal, what you'll see depressed truck docks. This isn't depressed truck docks. If you look on the elevations I gave you, these are just drive-ins. What you're probably gonna see, if it goes that way, is just like a plumber or some type of tradesman where he can pull his vehicle in, load it and unload it, and then pull it out.
But it won't be 18-wheelers.
No, it physically can't fit.
Yeah.
But box trucks could fit in there and make it hand load, so it could be a sort of a trucking terminal, small scale.
Yeah, it would be small scale, but you can't get the big, when I think trucking terminal, I'm thinking what you're thinking.
Right,
That
drive
last
onto
mile
the
guy,
dock,
you bring in, dump it, and then smaller trucks take it out. This is probably not
I'm
gonna be.
just thinking of the traffic, trying to get back out on Caucasus Street. That's
Yeah, that left stinks.
very testy on that intersection.
Nope, I'm cool.
Good. Kevin, you good?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
I'll read into the record. The Director of Public Health said, "We do not have an approved septic plan on file. The size and the flow of the system will be based on the number of employees within the space. If approved, the contractor would have to be able to build a compliant Title V system based on the future use of the property."
So we've designed the septic system to conform with Title V and the flows where if it was to be built out to the 20 individual contractor bays.
Excuse me, what do they consider number of people in a contractor bay?
So I think we assumed about 3 employees if they were to stay on
Okay.
site, but we kind of figured it would be more of they come in the morning and kind of leave the site for the day. And
The system is designed for what capacity? 3?
yeah, so
Per
3
bay?
for each bay, I believe.
Deputy Chief Laracy said the fire department is okay with the project. Chief Grace said the police department has no concerns as the location of the property is on a dead end and there are no traffic or roadway safety concerns. And then there is a very lengthy stormwater review document from Environmental Partners. Any comments on that?
We're in the process of working through all those comments right now.
Okay, anything else? Open it up to the public, sir? If you can just come up and join us so you can speak into the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Thanks. My name is Andy Felix, and although it doesn't state it on the plan, I own the property next door. It says I don't have my glasses. Nominee trust.
Nominee trust,
it's-
yeah.
Now it's a different.
Is that your
trust.
home address, or is there another one? Just for the record.
Is it what?
Your home
No,
address?
no, it's my business address.
What's your
next
home
door.
address?
It's in Rentham. I left Foxborough. Don't hold it against me.
We won't.
But I'm still a taxpayer in town, so, with 2 lots on that street. 6 and 8, and I don't know how this is number 11, but I think it all got a little screwy at one point.
Okay.
So I think it's irrelevant. I just didn't hear, how many bays were you proposing?
So it could be potentially up to 20 bays.
20 bays, and 3 employees per bay potentially?
Yeah,
So like 60 potential cars, right? Employee parking wise, that's the math, I think, right?
yeah, potentially.
But you have 20 some odd spaces on the plan.
Yep, so we provided 26 spaces, and that's just per the regs, so I have it on my layout and grading plan, so the required spaces would be 24, and we provide 26.
But if I could build on the gentleman's question, that's going to push a lot of parking into the cul-de-sac. Is that, I mean,
And
I don't know
that is a
where,
no-no.
and I don't know where else it would go.
The reality is,
around in there too?
Well, no, we just drive straight down Springbrook. We're not on the cul-de-sac any longer. They made sure of that.
the reality is you're not gonna have, you just don't have that density of people. So if you go, for example, go look at, I don't know, Elm Street, across from the DPW, there's that type of building, a contractor bay building. You know, you don't have that number of people. People who drive their vehicles here. What you're gonna have here is Joe Contractor, who drives his truck back and forth to his house. And, you know, there's not 3 employees parking there. You're mixing and matching. You asked us for a Title V number, and Title V goes by square footage of use. So that's, and the number of employees. So it's a different thing. And parking is based on the number, again, square footage and the use. So warehouse is based on 1 per 1,500, and the office is based on 1 per 300. And that's how we came up with the numbers. So you just can't mix and match what we're talking about here. It's a Title V versus that. We don't expect that, but we just have the flexibility to do something like that.
Are you concerned that they would attempt to park in the cul-de-sac or in other?
Well, I just think those numbers don't really work very well,
No, it doesn't.
to be honest. I mean, I don't want to bust chops. It's just that there's already a parking problem down there for employees. And, you know, if, I probably would say that they're not going to have 20 tenants down there.
Right.
I don't know if that would really be the case. But if we're going by, you know, these technicalities, it's tough, it's a tough one to say there's 20 bays and 24 spots.
Well, what you call technicalities, we call regulations. So,
Okay, yeah.
so the regs are, we are in compliance with the regs. And it doesn't talk about the number of bay doors or the number, it goes by square footage. And so I appreciate it, but just to give some comfort for everybody here, to Andy and the members, if you look at the facility, look south of the building here. I mean, if you're gonna have a lot of people, this is a lot of area that you could put additional parking in there. I'm just eyeballing it, you could probably fit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You could probably fit at least 20 more spaces along a parking lane in the middle there, as long as you didn't have to pull cars in. So you would have enough space to do it, and then there's parking, this area along the back here too. We just show it like this, really because the way a contractor, the way an owner thinks, they don't have a tenant. Sometimes you have a tenant, but in this particular case, you don't have a tenant. So what we're given as a mission is max it out. So max it out for 70% impervious. This is the size building I want to put in. Yeah, it doesn't look like I'll need that much pavement, but I might, because I might need it for outside storage, I might need it for additional parking. So I understand the concern, Andy's right. You know, there's issues down there with parking, but I don't think there's ever gonna be 20 tenants there. I don't think there's gonna be 60 people there during a day. And we do have parking, certainly have at least another 20, probably 25 spaces to go. So we could max that out to about 50-plus spaces if we had to.
The other question I had is so 20 bays, is that on the north and south side?
Yes.
Are they drive-through bays, or are they are?
Yeah, they're not depressed. They're drive-through here. I can
I
show-
didn't get a chance to see that.
Wait, let me show you. Technical problem here. Hold on.
Andy, do you have 2 pages there?
I don't.
Here. Look at this here we go.
Thanks.
So that you can see that there's drive-through bays on either side. I still don't know why.
Is this what you're looking for, Bill?
No, I was showing Andy the renderings.
Yep. And that's a steel building?
Yes. Yeah, you can keep that too, Andy.
No, thanks. And then, there's, on my side, that's a 15-foot buffer between mine and Green's.
10. 10.
How come I had to have a 15?
It's 10. The sideline from commercial to commercial is 10.
I don't really remember. I'm just,
It's all right.
but I really thought it was back then. I think it was 20
It might have been.
back then. And this was 2000 when I.
Yep, it might have been,
First-
absolutely.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Good, thank you.
Just as an abutter, I'm sure the other abutter is on the planning boards. That's why it's not here.
No, he's
in
on
Florida.
vacation.
Oh, how convenient. Thank you. for your
Thank
time.
you very much.
Anybody else?
Anybody else from the motion to close the public hearing?
No, no, no.
Continue?
Yeah, motion to continue the public hearing?
Because they have to address the stormwater.
Right. Motion to continue till,
How long do you guys need?
If we could continue it to April 28th.
And if you don't want to, if we're the only thing on the agenda that night, certainly continue it. I know you brought that up before.
very kind.
So
All
we
things
have,
important.
we have nothing on that agenda yet, so it could be, what, 7:15, Diana?
Do I hear a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Jeff, I. Tom, I.
Tracy, aye.
Gary, aye.
Kevin, I.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Being at or about 7:30, we'll open a public hearing, definitive subdivision, Old Wallamalog Street, proposed
Say that again?
two-lot subdivision, Stryer Development.
I didn't get that. Say that again?
You got to get it right before the hearing's open.
Walla Walla.
Walla Malpak. See, I'm keeping you on. Look at me.
big ass lots. Man alive. Wonder how they'll be assessed.
You guys can use my easel if you want.
That's what I was just gonna do. Thank you.
Don't let Paige put it up, though.
I did not, the last crooked version is not mine. I was perfectly poised for a while. Uh-oh. Paul, is that gonna work for you, that location? Good, okay.
It should face you so that camera can see it.
Okay.
That way?
Yeah, you can see it right there. You're right.
It's the easel.
Good evening, Attorney Frank Splain here, representing the applicant Strata Development. Here with me this evening is Stephanie Hoban, who is one of the engineers with Strong Point Engineering, also representing the applicant. We previously were in here on December 9th to go over informally Walpollenbog Street. We reviewed with the board a subdivision concept plan and a proposed concept plan at that time with certain waivers with regard to subdivision requirements and a proposed shared driveway. Just as a review, this street dates back to the 1800s and is a private way. It never was accepted as a public way, but has been a private way since the 1800s. Because it predates zoning and subdivision control, is not subject to subdivision control or road design requirements. However, it falls under section 81-4 of chapter 41 that requires adequate access for it. In working with the planning staff, though, it was decided that the best effort to determine that adequate access would be provided to the proposed two lots down there. We agreed to come in under the subdivision control bylaw in order to meet all those requirements and have everyone satisfied that it's a safe and adequate access. So this evening, I'd like to have Stephanie here go over the requirements with regard to regular subdivision control, but again, what we're proposing, which is a lot of waivers with regard to subdivision control, so it's a smaller, shorter street. And again, you come in on this from Sharon, and it dead ends by the railroad tracks. So there's no direct access to this part of the street from Foxborough. Stephanie, you want to go over it?
Yep. So the plan that's shown right now is we did the full design of the roadway to meet the requirements of the subdivision. So we have the full width of the right-of-way, curbing on both sides, sidewalks on both sides, and a cul-de-sac at the end to have the complete turnaround, as well as a full drainage basin for the access for the two lots. It creates a lot of pavement, a lot of clearing that wouldn't be necessary if we were to go with the smaller lots, the smaller roadway. got this requirement, sidewalks would actually start at the town line because the roadway improvements in Sharon have already been accepted, which is just the, I believe, is it 18 feet? I believe in Sharon we have 18 feet of pavement, which is what the agreement with the selectmen called for. So the sidewalks would start there. The right-of-way width would actually also expand. Because under existing conditions, although it varies, I think it's around 40 feet in most areas. So the full design would work. What we've actually proposed is, it's actually a much lower impact design, where we've got country drainage, where everything, instead of being a crowned road with closed drainage, everything is draining to one side to a proposed swale. So there's no curbing because it flows over the, there's a gravel water quality trench before it will flow into the swale. The swale actually slows down all of the flows in the water enough so that we don't actually need a basin. We meet all pre-existing. The pavement width is reduced to 18, which was the minimum access required. Instead of a cul-de-sac, we're proposing a hammerhead turnaround, and we've actually provided the truck turn radius that shows the fire trucks can come in and turn around if need be. Water, we have a hydrant. Water would actually be served by the Sharon Water Department, which is already under agreement. And as I said, this is only, we have 2 lots. There's no way for it ever to get expanded. I mean, it dead ends at the tracks, so. I can go through each waiver, or if you have any questions about this before we go through the waivers that we're requesting.
Any questions prior to the waivers? Kevin?
No, I don't have.
Okay. Why don't you walk us through the waivers?
Okay, so the first waiver we're actually requesting is, is a waiver of the review, a waiver of the fee for the administrative and review fee, because it's an existing right-of-way, it's not technically a full subdivision. The next waiver is from section 5.02, and that is that the street layout shall be a minimum of 50 feet. We have the existing right-of-way that varies in width from 21 feet to 57 feet. The next is the waiver requirement of section 5.02B for the road width of 20 feet. We're proposing 18, and at the 594 feet, that extra 2 feet of pavement is a lot of water that we'll be saving. So the waiver sought from section 503D, and that is that the distance to the edge of the layout line to where the dead end initiates is 800 feet. So we actually only have 590 feet of the roadway that's in Foxborough. The total length of the roadway improvements that began in Sharon is 877 feet. And the length is actually longer than that till you get to the closest intersecting street, but it's all existing condition that we can't really change. A waiver sought from 503E, which is the dead-end streets to have a cul-de-sac with the minimum layout diameter of 110. As I said, that we have the turnaround, and we've shown that the fire truck can completely turn around. So waiver sought from 504A, and that's for granite curbing to be installed on both sides of the roadways. We're requesting that we have, no curbing, and that's because of the country drainage, where if we curb it, the water gets stuck and can't enter our drainage swale. We're a waiver for section 504B, and that's the sidewalks required on both sides of the streets. We're actually proposing no sidewalks. It's 2 houses, and there are no sidewalks for it to connect to. So a waiver sought from section 506, which is stormwater management. So we actually do manage the stormwater. We have submitted the stormwater report. It's just, it's a country drainage situation. It's not a closed drainage, as is the standard. So then the next is a waiver from 508B, which is that all streets would have street lighting. It's basically a common driveway. Lighting would be provided by the homeowner as they saw fit. And then the next waiver would be section 508C, the requirement for street signage. The roadway signage is provided in Sharon. It wouldn't be necessary in Foxborough. And then the last is a waiver sought from section 509, the requirement for public shade trees. Actually, to install shade trees by the requirements, we'd actually have to clear more, so we'd have to get rid of the existing trees in order to install new ones that aren't at their full life. We actually were also talking about a special permit for our shared driveway and to access the 2 lots, and that's because of the existing wetlands on site. By having one shared driveway that is the same width as the proposed roadway, will still allow fire truck access, but it would include just one roadway crossing over the wetlands at its narrowest point, as opposed to having 2 separate driveways that would necessitate more disturbance in the wetlands. I think that's all I have to say. If you have any questions. Jeff?
You just mentioned that common drive, either Frank or Paige. Could you explain that that process for a special permit? I thought that was a zoning board matter for a shared drive.
No, this is like,
Oh.
this is like the one we just did on,
Yeah, no, it's a zoning provision,
Is it?
Yes.
special permit.
Had a few years ago, I can't remember how many.
Oh, okay.
For that purpose.
Yeah.
But it's a special permit through the planning board.
So just to clarify, a special permit requires 4 out of 5 votes, and a subdivision would require 3 out of 5 votes. So it's 2 different votes and 2 different voting thresholds. And you would need to find for the special permit that the common drive was beneficial, make findings.
Right. You would also mention seeking waivers for street drainage, obviously, and lighting as well. How is that handled in Sharon, or is it not?
So in Sharon, they aren't requiring lights. That was part of the agreement they have with the selectmen, and the drainage is, the swale actually starts on the Sharon side. And the swale, we did the drainage for the street as a whole, starting in Sharon. So our watershed takes into account both towns,
Okay.
and they approved the country drainage.
So there are no catch basins?
No
in the
catch
street?
basins.
Okay. I think that would be it for now.
Tom, anything?
No, so the last fire hydrant is at the end of the street?
Yep.
How far are the houses away from there? Like, how long is the
driveway.
That would be a good question.
See through.
I, I would say that the driveway is probably about 200 feet, and if the water or fire department would require extra measures at the houses.
The fire department has reviewed it, including the hammerhead turnaround, and has signed off on it.
Okay, in the file, I have the health department, I have the water department, and I have Chief Grace. I do not have the fire department.
The fire department participating in the meetings when we were discussing, you know, what would be the acceptable width of the road and length of the road and the location of the fire hydrant. So I'm sorry, I didn't get a written memo from them.
No, that's okay,
they-
but are they,
They
they're,
have participated in the discussions.
yep, and just to add, the health department has not received plans for the on-site septic systems at these properties. If the subdivision is approved, they would need to install compliant Title V systems at both properties.
Yes, we are aware of that. We actually, many years ago, did initial
Protest.
perk tests on each lot, just to make sure that it would be viable. And then if it is approved, then obviously, we would do full septic designs.
Okay, and then the assistant superintendent of the water department said, we're assuming this development will be fed by the town of Sharon's water, which you already stated is the case.
Yep.
Chief Grace said, my only concern is how we're going to work on developing a response for public safety as the units have to go through Sharon to get there, and I'm concerned there could be confusion. This will have to be worked out with SEMRECC. Besides that, no other concerns.
And I would add that, I mean, we had this case in Rentham before, and one of the other conditions we put in was about school buses, that we required that the parents deliver the children to the nearest Foxborough, or in that case, Rentham school bus stop. So it was just, I mean, there's just no way for,
Right.
obviously, to provide school buses there. So we put bunch of conditions like that. We would include those in there.
And we're fine with that, and conditions with regard to snow plowing, and things like that.
Yeah,
It's just
and it would
common.
remain private in perpetuity, whatnot.
Just quickly, back to that common drive on number C3, on overlay C3. I assume that the reason it's down there is because of contours and topography in that, where it's
Yes.
located, as opposed to kind of hugging the property line.
So,
And that would require an easement of sorts, yeah.
yes. Show you. So if you look at the subdivision sheet, we're actually showing an access and utility easement for the area on lot 2 that would provide the access for lot
Yeah.
1. The driveway is located where it is for topography and also because of the stream crossing.
Right.
That's actually the narrowest spot, and that was the easiest way to access it without disturbing the most. With disturbing the least amount of natural buffer that exists.
It's also here. Kevin?
No, the only, as long as Gabby says that the fire department is okay in relation to the location of the fire hydrant, it is going to be a little bit concerned here in cases of both the public safety, because the access begins in Sharon and ends in Foxborough, and somehow, I think, I'll have to take Chief Grace's position on that as the proper way to do it, where I'm presuming both communities are considered host communities, and they'll work out the detail on how the residents will call in cases of emergency, either fire, ambulance, or police needs.
Okay. Gary?
No, good right now.
Paige? Concerns, questions?
No, I don't, well, this is a joke around the office because this project, I don't know if you recall, has come up over and over, and it seems to come up like every year or so that just a long enough time to forget the details. This is a unique circumstance because, as Frank mentioned, it was a way in existence prior to subdivision control. So technically, if you recall, there was that whole issue with the A&R to separate it to allow the Sharon side to go. So we've gone through this quite a bit. They did not have to file for the definitive subdivision plan. I think council advised them that this would be a cleanest way. We've been working for years on this. So, no, I think at this point, it's a decent compromise. Like I say, we've vetted this a lot. We're trying to make sure that it has the least impact. If you require a full road, it's going to be very disruptive. It's not going to match Sharon, and it's for 2 lots. They're large lots. There'll be no more out there. And I think we can get through the sort of logistics. With land prices the way they are, it just, people are finding these harder solutions. You know, it's not optimum to have, you know, a town served through another town, but it does happen, and it will require cooperation, and there will be limits, and we always recommend the deed clearly reflect that so that future buyers, you know, maybe not the first buyers who are fully aware of what they're buying into, but the third buyers who think, well, we would like town services like snow plowing or trash removal, although the town doesn't require that, so provide that. So anyway, long story is, this is unique, and this is a circumstance we're trying to resolve.
Okay.
And we do, just so you know, we do have, in addition to what I'm assuming butters here, we have a few people on Zoom that may want to speak.
Okay. Anything from the board?
I'd rather hear from the butters.
Okay, so just the way a public hearing works, if it's your first time, welcome. We hope to see you again. You just need to come up to the microphone.
Hold on, Tracy, why don't we make sure that
Are you guys here for this?
but the 2 women, are they here for this?
Gabby? Sorry? Are you 2 here for this?
No, they're here for the parking
We didn't know that it was moved.
Oh.
Oh, okay. No worries. Are any of you here for this hearing? Okay, I guess not. What about anybody on Zoom?
Okay,
Yes,
so we.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you could just state your name and your address, please.
Okay, hello, good evening. My name is Amy Clayman. I hope you can hear me. I live at 42 Old Wallamalapag Street in Sharon, and I don't know if you can see on the drawings that the engineer was pointing to where my house is, but it is at the very end of Old Wallamalapag, in the corner between Old Wallamalapag and what becomes Foxborough, where the existing street ends. I heard you say this has been a joke around your office for the past few years. I'm sorry to hear that you think it's a joke, because for me, it is not a joke. It's been a very serious and emotional and just really upsetting experience to know that this has progressed even to the point where it is at. We were never notified by Sharon that the A&R petition was being presented. I understand it's a done deal, but for many reasons, I think it was inappropriate for Sharon to approve the A&R. The attorney at the beginning suggested that Old Wallamalapag has been a street in existence since the 1800s. I wonder if any of the members of the planning board have been to actually see the site. It is what is considered a paper road. It's a line on a drawing. It is not an existing street. For the past 20 years, from the time I purchased my home, there has been nothing more than a gravel dirt path that leads down a wooded trail that is reminiscent of something you might see at Moose Hill or Borderland Park in Sharon. I don't know the trails in Foxborough, to give you an example. It is not a road. A vehicle could not drive in it. You can walk your dog down the path, and that is about the extent of the width. And I understand they want to pave the road 18 feet, etc. That paved road is going to cross over my front lawn and seriously impact where I live, my property, the ability for my children to be outside, or the children of any future homeowner, because it's a road over the front lawn at my property. There are other neighbors of mine who are on the Zoom call who can speak to what they feel the impact may and may not be. But I would at least hope that you would take a look at the actual property before you make your decision about the road. Because I'm not sure that it satisfies the requirement for safe and adequate access. Secondly, based on this conversation, I do have concerns about public safety and fire accessing the property. Old Wallamalapike, as it exists now, is a pretty long road. There's no direct way from Foxborough to get to the road. The fastest way is to come down East Street, which becomes East Foxborough Street, to turn onto Wallamalapike Street, to do another turn, to go all the way back. You essentially have to go to the nearest place where you can drive around the railroad tracks. It's a long amount of roadway and time to access where those lots are going to be. And I'm not sure, and it worries me that there won't be clear plans for how fire, police, ambulance will access those lots. We've heard a lot of concern about wetlands and the driveway, avoiding the wetlands, but I'm not sure that accessing those property takes into account the people who already live in Sharon. And with all due respect, because I know this is the Foxborough Planning Board, but it is a little hard to conceive of Foxborough allowing this major impact to happen to residents of Sharon, and shame on the Sharon Planning Board for not recognizing that as well.
Mrs. Clayman, if I could just ask you, because we have other folks that would like to speak as well.
Yep.
If you want to just wrap up, or are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Those are them.
I do have a
I wanna-
question about her comment about paving on her property.
So all of the pavement is actually located within the existing right-of-way, but I'm assuming that she has assumed that her front yard is within the existing right-of-way.
Right, extended out there.
No, I understand the property lines and the existing right-of-way. What I'm telling you is that the way it exists now is not what it looks like on paper. You can draw all the lines you want on the map, but that is not what is actually in practice. I bought a property that was at the end of a dead-end street with a little gravel path, having been led to understand that that path led into Foxborough, but those lots, or there would never be building beyond my property because there was no access from Foxborough. It has never been a roadway. You can't drive in it. It's not plowed in the winter by any town. It is not.
Ms. Clayman, if I could just ask you to wrap up, just so we can let your other neighbors speak as well, please.
Well, I have in the past spoken on behalf of all of my neighbors, as this has the greatest impact on me. I appreciate that they want to speak, but I do want to make it clear that it would be helpful for you to actually look at the property.
Thank you.
Because it sounds great to say it's in the existing right of way. I am not ignorant of where my property line is. I am saying that if you come to look at it, you would understand what I mean.
Thank you.
Before you
Thank you.
Mrs. Clayman, I just have one question for you, and that is, did you personally raise these same concerns with the Sharon Planning Board when they were having their hearings?
No, because they never notified us that this was pending. They never gave us notice as abutters, and by the time they made the decision, they had approved the A&R, which is not appealable. So I never had the opportunity. And in fact, after the case, the attorney for the town of Sharon came down and said, oh, now I understand what you're talking about. But they never gave me the opportunity, or any of the neighbors, to come to the hearing or present any information to them. So thank
Frank,
you for asking.
do you want to comment on that?
I wasn't involved in it, but I know there was an agreement that was negotiated with the selectmen of the town of Sharon with regard to Sharon's portion. So my client could go in there and pave the Sharon portion right up to the Foxborough town line right now, and it's 18 feet in width.
With no additional approvals needed?
No, nothing required in that town. So that was ironed out there. In that agreement, it also limits that land right there to only 2 lots. So that was part of it, even though there's a lot of land there. That was part of the agreement because of the impact that, possibly a large subdivision could have gone in there. Now it's wet, so who knows what could have really gone in there. But that was part of the agreement with regard to the town. These
Okay.
lots will have the same safety to access as her house.
Okay.
It's a little further down the street, so, that's not a big impact. And when I say, it's a road in existence, it existed for a long time. There was a bridge there across the railroad tracks. The bridge burned down. There was no houses down at this end. It overgrown. But the road still exists on paper and has a right to be built.
Understood. Thank you. Mr. Smith, did you want to speak? Just name and address, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Stephen Smith. I live at 1 Old Wallamullapog Street. Even though I'm at the beginning end of the street, for a dead-end street, it is a very busy street. Again, because there's another street off of it called Black Elk, there's cars all day long running up and down the streets as I walk my dogs, as kids go to the school bus. So we're always concerned about adding more houses to our neighborhood because especially as we see our kids growing, getting teenagers, their ages, they're all driving wildly down the street. People think on a small street they can drive faster for no apparent reason. But the reason why I'm here tonight is because I'm questioning what the requirements are in Foxborough for frontage of property. I know here in Sharon we have very large frontage requirements, and I'm not sure I understand what it is, and I'm sorry I haven't been to previous meetings on this account. But what I question and what I thought I knew about was that how can you allow frontage on a street that doesn't exist? It hasn't been in existence for over 20 years. I guess that's really the main question that I'm still, you can say, sure, something dates back on an old map to 1800, but for a street that hasn't been used, or what you call a street, for over 20 years, how can you actually allow frontage on it? Thank you.
It's the legal right.
Right.
It's a street that exists. So again, in Sharon, they didn't go through subdivision. They worked with the Board of Selectmen, came to an agreement, they signed, and they built the road that provided adequate access there. And again, in that agreement, it limited the Foxborough land right there to 2 lots. But it is still a way in existence, even if it overgrows. And the individual that own the way have the right to improve it. And there are still streets like that in Foxborough, I'm sure in Sharon, that still exist, that can be built up. Camp Road is a prime example here in Foxborough. And each of them have their different issues with regard to this. Again, we didn't have to go through the subdivision control. We didn't have to notify butters. But we came forward to, as Paige said, get this done and get it done in a way that could provide adequate access as well as safety issues and all that to be really vetted.
And it would be 200 feet of frontage.
Right.
It would be complying lots of
Yeah,
200
plenty-
feet of frontage.
plenty of frontage.
And so, Mr. Smith, just so, if you were listening to Attorney Spillane, there were different approaches taken in the town of Sharon and the town of Foxborough. And to your question about, how do you pull frontage off a road that may or may not exist, whatever. I would almost liken this myself to an extension of an existing roadway that was going to service additional lots at some point, and typically that would be handled by some sort of cul-de-sac for the purposes not just of public safety or turnarounds, but also for the purposes of pulling frontage off that cul-de-sac. And in this particular case, the applicant is requesting a waiver from the construction of that cul-de-sac at the end, essentially asserting that for 2 lots, it would not be necessary, and also it would be an additional disruption and pavement that we really don't need or want probably at that location. So it was a different process entirely followed in the town of Sharon for those approvals,
Thanks.
if that makes sense to you.
Okay. Kevin? Any comments?
I don't have any moment.
Okay. Anybody, any other buddy in the public out there that I can't see? Okay. Do I hear a motion to close the public? Are we closing or are we continuing?
I think you can close. I mean, unless you guys have any reason you want to.
I don't have any reason to
I'll
continue.
make a
this.
motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second,
All those in favor?
Jeff, I.
Tom,
Tracy, I.
Gary, aye.
Kevin, I.
Tell me what to do.
So you have, if you're going to vote tonight, you have 2 votes. One is is the definitive subdivision plan with the waivers. This is similar to the other subdivisions we've done where you waive the construction standards. So there's that part of it. And then there's also the special permit for the common driveway. And that would be to determine, that you feel that provides the standard special permit language, but that it provides, safe and adequate.
Do we need to do them in any order?
So they, yeah, I guess probably subdivision
Oh,
first, then
it
special
just
permit.
makes sense to
Yeah,
do it
because you
that
have to
way,
get
yeah.
to the driveway from the road.
Somebody want to make a motion?
So I'll make a motion to approve the subdivision request with the, all the waivers requested.
I do want to add that they've got to figure out the safety, the police and fire.
Yep.
at least the letter, right, from the fire department?
Yeah. Well, no, that's okay, but how they're gonna handle emergency call-outs.
Oh, right.
Know where it goes.
Yeah, so I had made some notes that I would add into the condition to be no school bus pickup or town trash, even though that, like, if ever provided.
It's going to be a private way in
Private in
perpetuity.
perpetuity.
Yep.
And then, the plowing, I had forgotten the word plowing.
Did you say trash?
Yes. And plowing, so those would be somewhat incorporated, Sharon water. And then, yes, the public safety will have to be, worked out, whether, I mean, that goes without saying, but yeah, that, they'll have to work out.
And then if there's a need, are we concerned about how far away the fire hydrant is, or the fire was
Adding
okay
one
with it?
for, did Foxborough Fire add
They'll have
any
to-
fire
Well,
hydrants?
the one at the end, that was a request of the fire.
Okay, so they have one in there at the
Okay.
request.
Are we,
Vote,
hold on, we got to vote, hold on one second. Do you want to add a condition, Jeff?
Well, how about future improvements on these gigantic lots?
What do you mean?
Well, future barns, garages.
I don't think we can dictate what they can do on the
Why
property.
would you want to limit that?
If it's their property, we can't dictate what
And
they
this
do
is just
on
for
it.
the road right now, so definitive, we're not even talking about lots, we're just talking about the road.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that. Any other?
And some of those would come up before zoning board anyway.
Okay,
The garage thing would, depending on whether it was unattached or attached, size, height, et cetera, that would be a zoning board matter.
okay. Paige and Gabby, anything that we're not thinking of?
So standard conditions for this type of use, I'm sure
The
you've
the
already-
lighting,
No lighting, yeah, those are all part of the waivers,
Those are all the
right?
waivers.
right,
that are-
but the lighting typically you guys like at the beginning of the joint common driveway?
Oh, well, we're not doing common driveway, are we?
I'm in the
Not right
shared
now.
driveway, I'm sorry.
No, I know, but we're not talking about that, just, right,
Okay.
we're on the subdivision, right? So, but the lighting, that was one of your
But-
waivers, right?
But it can be in the subdivision, you know?
Yeah.
It was in Water Street and
Right, okay.
South Street.
Yep.
So you want to put that in.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, do I hear a second on the motion?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
All right.
Oh, hold on, you go in order.
We've established a routine area, Gary.
I don't like change.
Jeff, I.
Tom, aye.
Tracy, I.
Gary, aye.
Kevin, I.
Okay. Now we're going to make a,
So do you want a little bit more on the shared driveway? Because I think Jeff would love it. So, the shared driveway is a single driveway may be constructed to serve 2 lots. A shared driveway provides vehicular access from public way to the lots. The applicant shall demonstrate that each lot otherwise has legal and functional access, and it is possible to construct a driveway on each lot. 3, the applicant shall demonstrate that the shared driveway addresses one or more of the following: vehicular safety issues, site distance improvements, or preservation of land features such as existing trees, stone walls, and other amenities. So I think that would be C.
I would agree.
So, and it is an SP, a special permit from the planning board for the type.
So how many feet is the actual driveway from the edge of the new paved road up to each of the individual homes theoretically right now? Because we're not sure exactly where the house will be built.
Well, it's shown as 18,
Not the
which would be
18
the same
feet?
No,
as
that's the
road.
width. He's talking the length.
Oh, I'm
She
sorry.
mentioned earlier about 200 feet.
Each driveway would be approximately 200 feet from the intersection of the roadway.
No, the shared section is 200 feet.
The shared section is 200 feet.
Yes, the shared section is 200 feet. The driveway we have shown on sheet C3 for lot 1 is actually a lot longer because it needs to wind around the wetlands. So that driveway itself would probably be about 250 to 300 feet to where we're showing the houses.
You have a concern, Kevin?
No, I just wanted to get an idea of how what the distance was, especially in reference to, and apparently based on what Attorney Spillane and the engineer are presenting, they're going to presume that the homeowners will be responsible for lighting up that portion of their own driveway to their homes, et cetera. So I'm just
If they
trying to get
want
an idea of how long the driveways were going to be. I
Right.
don't think a 200 or 250-foot driveway is a cause for concern myself.
In past decisions, we have subdivision with all these waivers, typically require putting a light somewhere at the beginning of the roadway. That's the typical language that was used recently and in the past, and then beyond that, it's up to the homeowners.
You had mentioned this before, and I'm sorry, I don't know where it is. Where's the utility easement?
So if you
It's
look
this
at,
shaded area.
If you look on sheet,
Oh, which is the driveway?
yeah,
Yes.
so,
Okay.
because the utilities would go through the driveway.
Okay.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I don't wanna get-
So if
What?
I don't wanna get-
if you're gonna light the driveway, which house is it gonna come from? Where's the power gonna come from?
That'll be determined by the developer.
Jeff likes to have control.
You know. And then they could have more going back, but typically in your decisions, you've required one light at the beginning from the roadway onto the shared driveway.
No lighting on my shared driveway.
Well, that's on you.
Well, you were, pre-subdivision, I think.
It was, that was a zoning matter, yeah.
so for special permit criteria, you have, community needs served by the proposal. Number 2, traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading. 3, adequacy of utilities and other public services. 4, neighborhood character and social structures. 5, impact on the natural environment. And 6, potential economic and fiscal impact to the town. So those are that's for every special permit.
So I think I think it's 4 and 5.
Yeah.
4 and 5, this addresses quite well, which, could you just repeat what those are, Paige?
Neighborhood character and social structures and impact on the natural environment.
Yeah, I think it meets.
Yep, who wants it?
But you have to find, that Jeff loves this, that the adverse effects, remember this one? That the adverse effects that do not outweigh its beneficial impacts to the town or the neighborhood in view of the particular characteristics of the site and the proposed in relation to the site.
That is correct.
That you just would want to incorporate that into your findings and your vote.
Okay.
You could reference that.
Jeff, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would move that we approve the site plan for the
Special permit.
Special permit.
special permit for the shared driveway for the definitive subdivision, 1 Wallamallabog Street in Foxborough, for a 2-lot subdivision, and for the purposes as spelled out in the regs, which would be in particular numbers 4 and 5, dealing with neighborhood character and also
Minimizing.
environmental impact.
And if I may, I think you want to be specific to that, because I'm sure the neighbors from right now are saying this doesn't help the neighborhood, but the alternative
Yes.
is, 2 driveways, more disturbance. and
More
whatnot. So I think
pavement.
So you're not going from zero-sum game to this, you're looking at the alternatives of a full build versus this reduced build. So just to be clear, that's your
Correct,
finding.
because they could go ahead and just do the full build
Right,
by right.
yeah.
And this
the
will,
big issue is the wetlands.
yeah, and this
Crossing,
will,
there could be 2 done there.
yep, and this will minimize the impact.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Jeff, I.
Tom,
Tracy, aye.
Gary, aye.
Kevin, I.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, that vote counted.
all right.
Like that was your special permit vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom's doing a great job over here. I got Gary talking out of turn. Jeff wants to control the world. When are you coming back?
He just left.
I don't want to talk about it.
All right,
Okay.
so now we have the
We're going to talk about marijuana.
marijuana. And on our Zoom today, we have, sorry.
I make a motion to continue the public hearing for the special permit site plan for the west side of Route 1 to construct 4 new parking lots and perform improvements for existing parking lots, NPS LLC. Continue until April 7th at
7 o'clock, it's the only thing on the agenda.
7 o'clock. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Jeff, I.
Tom, aye.
Tracy, aye.
Kevin, I.
Gary.
Gary, aye.
Okay, so on our call with us, so just to clarify, after the last meeting, we went over the marijuana bylaw. You have a new draft in front of you. A few changes that I outlined in my email are just that we combined Article 1 and 2 into one, and that was at the request of the moderator, just so that you wouldn't want one to pass without the other, vice versa. We also had tightened up some language at the request of town council. And then the other one, the big one was just as you recall, we went through the planning board requirements, and so I did, after our last meeting, revise that to reflect our conversation. So I did put together a little PowerPoint. I was asked to do this just because, we're taking this on the road. It's going to the selectmen Tuesday night. It has to go in front of the AdCom, and it just seemed to be helpful to provide some context. So if I may, go ahead and figure out how to do my slideshow. I will do that. So let's see, share screen. Oops, okay, back up. All right, so marijuana's in it. So this is a timeline, just to provide a little context. It was all the way back in 2008 that it was marijuana was decriminalized. In 2012, so now 10 years ago, the mass voters voted to legalize medical marijuana. In 2016, it was legalized, recreational was done. And then in 2017, Foxborough banned recreational marijuana. And then in 2018, the first 2 marijuana stores opened in Massachusetts. So that's just sort of the history. So the question is, why are we doing this now? We did have a 2017 non-binding referendum, and that was really because at the time, I don't know if you all recall, the regulations from the Cannabis Control Commission weren't even finalized. And it was kind of like the towns didn't really know what was coming. There was fears about, the public all thronging, like they did for the first couple ones. There were lines and there were some impacts. So the town of Foxborough went to ballot and went for a non-binding, and then went to town meeting, and it did get banned at that time. Since that time, we've seen this project, this type of use pop up all around us, and we've seen minimal impacts. So we've learned that it's not as, there was a lot of fears, and they haven't really necessarily been realized. And in fact, for example, I think what really hit a lot of people was Sharon. They opened their dispensary on Route 1, and hardly anybody even noticed. There's really been nothing, but they've seen some financial benefits, and we'll get to that in the next slide. So that's sort of why you can see that Sharon opened a dispensary, a retail one in August of 2020. Plainville was February 21, and Mansfield was 2021, October 2021. And Mansfield is actually right in, I think it used to be the old Orange Leaf, and now it's called Relief. So it's right in there across from, the LO Bean Plaza there, so Mansfield Crossing. So, initially, everybody, we all, people have fears of marijuana, and rightfully so in some aspects. It's not something to be taken lightly, but we have seen that there really has not been an increase in crime. And there's been a study that showed there was a decrease in the odds of teen marijuana use, and then they've proven that the property values have not been affected negatively, or they've actually risen. So we've, a lot of the concerns that were initially approached, we've not seen realized here in Massachusetts. But before we jumped in too deep, there was an extensive vetting process been done. Town of Brookline was opened one of the first dispensaries, and they had a lot of impacts, and I was out during the time, but I know Leah Gibson and Bill Keegan, and others met, and the police chief, I believe, met with Brookline, one of their police, and they got a lot of great recommendations and had some really great advice. And actually, when the police chief first heard about this, he was a hard no, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think he's been comforted by some of the information out there, and we'll let him speak to that on his own. But we have been working with the police chief. We've been researching other communities, as evidence with town council being on that. We've been working closely with town council, selectmen and planning board. We're trying to work together on this. So we really are trying to incorporate feedback and develop something that will be good for the community. So another big reason, why are we doing this? Well, Massachusetts is reaping the benefits. It's been $122 million in tax revenue from the first fiscal year. This is fun, talks about the 20% tax, includes a local option for tax up to 3%. And as of December of last year, more revenue was made through marijuana sales than liquor sales for the first time. So we are seeing quite a dramatic increase. Why are we doing it now? Well, we also feel like at a certain point the market's going to get saturated. Where, we already have a bunch around us. So here's the financial benefits for the communities around us. Sharon's $325,000 last year on their thing. Plainville only opened for a couple months. They were at $35,000. Lakeville, I tried to look for communities that were smaller and not, like cities. Most of them are in bigger communities. Like I didn't count like a Hudson or a Marlboro or those type. But Lakeville is 191,000 plus, Rowley 129, Middleborough 159, and Millis 370,000. So, and these are small population communities, a lot of these. So they are reaping the benefits, and they are not seeing the impacts. So then the question is town's role. This is one of those instances where the state is has tight controls on what towns can and can't do. They kind of assume that the town's going to go ahead and ban everything, because most communities do, so they make it so that we can't put too many belts and suspenders on there. So we can, adopt our own licensing or approval process, but we can't conflict with the regulations of the state. We can't make it more difficult or unreasonable. Once we approve retail, we cannot prohibit delivery or transport through the locality, and I don't think we can prohibit it right now. Like, if someone was crossing through from one town to another, you can't say, oh, you can't use Foxborough roads for that. And you can limit the number of marijuana establishments below 2, but based on our liquor license, our package store number, but we would have to do a ballot and a town meeting vote. So right now, there would be, so I'll get into that, hold on. So the concerns and considerations that we've been working with is there'd be no marijuana use in or around uptown Foxborough. We looked at non-residential areas for obvious reasons. And then one other thing we have been looking at is, how can we make these buffers? But this is one of those instances where it's tough. We did ask Pat Costello if we could bump up the buffers, to say 1,000 feet or add more protected uses, but that's a dicey area, and it's quite limited in what we can do. Go ahead, Chief.
Just a question. I noticed you're bolding pre-existing. So what if we built another school? Not that I think we will.
Right.
Or a daycare.
Well, you couldn't kick out but the point is you just couldn't make the marijuana facility legal.
Okay,
You just
but
have to
if
be
like
aware
I
they're
put
there.
there's a school, somebody couldn't put a new marijuana thing.
Correct, it's only
Okay,
a new
thank
use.
you.
But
Okay.
once they're there,
You can't boot them. Okay.
Yeah. So the big news since the last meeting is that at first there was some question about whether the beer and wine package stores counted towards the number, and we've since confirmed with town council that they do. So Foxborough has 10 package stores. Thusly, with the 20% ratio, Foxborough would be allowed 2 marijuana retailers at a minimum, unless there was a ballot vote, unless there was a town meeting vote, so not 1. So that is different than what's been out there, and we want to be very upfront about that. That's sort of new news. So it would be 2. And the other thing is, in our original draft, we did prohibit delivery, and we've learned that while we can prohibit delivery for retailers in our town, once we allow a retailer in our town, we can't prohibit delivery from other towns. So we kind of took that out, because we're like, why would we penalize our retailers
Right.
when any other retailer? So those are 2 of the bigger changes that have come up. The other question is we want to provide a little more insight into the process. I know Jeff will love to see this, kind of like how.
Well, personally, I think this is the most important part.
Yeah, so it's, the applicant starts out, well, so first of all, this doesn't talk about, prior to this, what we anticipate happening is the town would control this by putting out an RFP, seeking the highest and best use at the time, the location, so that way, particularly with 1, but I think we'd still want to do it with the 2, where the town kind of gets to decide and evaluate where these will be located and how it will go. So that's sort of first, and then once we get into, okay, there's an applicant coming up, they would meet with the town administration, then they'd have to go through the whole marijuana host community agreement and present at the Board of Selectmen meeting. And then the selectmen can decide if they want to begin negotiating. We do have in the language that the selectmen could, appoint another committee if they wanted to have an ad hoc committee to represent them on that, although it has to be the BOS that doesn't, that signs the agent. They're the only ones that can do that.
And not the town manager?
Or the town manager, right. And we can ask Pat on that.
I just think that needs to be specified
All right,
as
we'll get
well.
to that one. And then they have to have a community outreach meeting, and it has to be within 6 months of filing application with the Cannabis Control Commission. Then they'd apply for a provisional license. While they wait for it, that would probably be the time they'd start getting their local permits, and that would, they come to the planning board. CCC will check on the compliance with local bylaws. We have 60 days to respond. CCC will grant the provisional license, and then after all local permits have been granted, then the applicant can apply for the final license, and then finally that would be issued. So this isn't written anywhere, but this is just sort of, I've been asked to sort of see how this would go. So this is what we envision to be happening. So this is the highlights. We wanted to make sure we're clear. So there would be a number allowed of 2. In the bylaw right now, it would be limited to 2. So that number, we could limit it in the bylaw. If we went below 2, we'd have to do the ballot and the town meeting vote.
Just to clarify, in terms of the ratio to liquor retailers, how about if the state relaxes that, or is that currently when we adopt this bylaw? Or will that grow in the future as the state becomes more generous?
I would have to ask town council on that. So you're asking all the questions. I don't know, Pat, are you on? Do we want to take these as we're going on? Let me see if he's permitted to speak. There he is. Ask to unmute. Here he comes.
Good evening.
May I move the easel?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, yes, you can. Especially now that I have it up. So Jeff, do you want to pose, you had two questions. You want to, Pat's on the, you can't see him, but he's here. Hi, Pat, can we hear you?
Good evening. Yes, I can hear and see you. Yes.
I'm sorry, did you hear that last question that I had posed regarding the ratio of prospective licenses versus liquor retail licenses that the town holds through the ABCC?
I did indeed. And that would be a sliding scale analysis.
Yep.
If the number of liquor licenses increases, the number of minimum establishments should be required to allow in town would increase as well by the 20%.
Yep, got it, thank you.
And then you had one other one. What was the last one that you had? I've already forgotten it. It was just, hold on, let me go back to slide to see if we remember what it was. Oh, no.
Town manager?
Town manager, yes, good, Tom.
So, actually, this came up,
Firing on all cylinders.
I took a nap.
Pat, because when you were on remotely at the last select board meeting, there seemed to be some ambiguity from you at that time whether this license would be executed by the Board of Selectmen or the town manager. And I just think that when we're at town meeting, that needs to be specific.
Absolutely. It could be either. It's a community preference type thing and determined by the charter bylaws of the community. The official who executes the host community agreement would have to have legal authority to bind the town to a contract. And in my opinion, in Foxborough, that would be the Board of Selectmen as the chief executive officer of the town and the town manager, who under the town special act does have contracting authority for the town.
Mr. Costello, are you suggesting that the Board of Selectmen would have to vote it as an example, and then Mr. Keegan would have the right to authorize?
I think it could be either, Kevin, depending on the preference of the community. As long as the designated officer does have the legal authority to enter contracts on behalf of the town, one or the other could do it, in my view. In most communities that I've worked with who have marijuana establishments, it is the Board of Selectmen who votes to approve host community agreements. They may then delegate to the town manager the authority to actually sign the document.
Okay.
Town manager.
And one other
cannot-
question: is there any question regarding? So there potentially could be two, and is there any distinction between pure recreational versus medical, or are they combined? You know, does it make any difference, or?
The subject bylaw in the statute under which it is adopted, Chapter 94G, relates only to recreational adult use. So any medical treatment centers that would choose to locate in Foxborough would not be subject to this particular bylaw. You do have, as you know, a separate zoning bylaw that governs medical facilities.
So Pat, I'm sure you heard what I said. Did I say anything wrong so far? Anything?
No, you did it. I thought it was a great presentation,
Okay.
Paige.
I think Gary had a question.
Thank you. Pat, can the town manager sign for a liquor license? Strictly
No, I
selected.
think, no, the licensing authority of the town, the local licensing authority under the liquor laws is the Board of Selectmen.
Right, I would think this is pretty much the same thing.
Are you concerned that just one signature could make this happen?
No, because it still has to be
Yeah.
voted on by the Board of Selectmen, but why wouldn't it follow the same suit as a liquor license?
Which
They
the Board of
actually-
Selectmen have to sign.
They actually sign and issue it, yes.
So you're saying
Should be
that
the same way,
it should be the same way, so the town manager shouldn't be signing these,
correct.
is what he's saying.
And I don't know
I
that
don't
that's
disagree
for
with
us
that.
to-
Most
I don't know that
communities-
that's for us to
most communities
decide,
don't.
so I
It
don't
is not
know.
for us to decide. I can't stress enough that, when you go to an auditorium half full of older people that aren't going to understand this, there really can't be any kind of ambiguity or kind of iffy stuff here or there. It just needs to be out there, what you want to do, and, as clear as it could be.
And I think, like, maybe shortening this PowerPoint a little, but
Yes.
honing in on
But we could talk
having a
about that.
PowerPoint, I think is gonna be key.
At town meeting?
Yes.
So, Madam, whoever, is it you, Tracy, who's the chair tonight, or is it Kevin? Who's the chair
Well,
tonight?
I'm the
Well, that's
chair,
a
but
little
Tracy
ambiguity.
is, asking questions or,
Okay.
because I don't have documents in front of me.
There you
I'm
go.
covering for
Unfortunately,
Kevin, Dennis.
My computer.
If I could just make a point here, I know there's ambiguity over that issue of the signing of the agreement, but this isn't even going to affect me personally. So I know that because it's going to be at least a year before this actually even gets acted on at that level. But I would say, given the nature of this, and since it is so new, that my recommendation would be that the selectmen vote it, and then maybe then they either sign it themselves or give the authorization to the town manager to sign it. But I would not think it would be prudent, given the nature of the community that I know, and given the sensitivity to the issue, that the authority should be vested in the town manager for this instance. And while I appreciate Pat's thoughts on this completely, and he's correct technically, I think given the circumstances, probably the best thing to do under the circumstances.
Actually, I think that's wise, Bill.
That was Bill Keegan, our town manager, just in case anybody
We were
wondered.
trying to recognize the voice, Bill.
Sorry about that.
So just to go on, this is the map. I don't know if this is on screen for the public consumption at home, but we have come up with a proposed map with no residential areas, and obviously, that it's open for discussion. So the next steps would be a town meeting vote. If passed, the selectmen and the planning board would adopt their own regulations for marijuana applications. Ours would be sort of like, how we have special permit regulations, so we'd adopt some sort of regulations for that, outlining specifics. And I imagine the selectmen would come up with their own process that list, for example, would go in one of ours or theirs. Then I know the police chief, that if this did pass, he would want to, in the fall town meeting or spring, because we know this wouldn't happen overnight, adopt a rule to prohibit public smoking of marijuana. There's already a rule, but it's just something that gives him the teeth so that he can enforce it. So that's something. And then we anticipate issuing requests for proposals so as to seek the best proposal.
So can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking more about, like, people are going to want to know, so, how is this going to happen, blah, 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 and you've kind of spelled that out, but we've already been approached informally by parties interested in this type of commerce. So let's just say we have a town meeting vote. Is the only way to get from point A to B is through the RFP process, or can someone come in, 3 days later and say, I'd like to get in that queue, you know what I'm saying?
Pat, do you have?
And if so, and the only reason I bring that up, so part of that process is, you've got it spelled out here, is the planning board would need to, research and adopt some internal regulations. So, I'm thinking about the sequencing of all that.
Pat, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'd be happy to address that, if I may, through you. Each town adopts its own scheme, if you will, for processing these applications. The towns do have some discretion in determining with whom they're going to execute host community agreements. The Cannabis Control Commission's regulations and guidances are very clear on that point. But they also are very clear and very adamant about maintaining a fair and impartial process in establishing rules that render the determination of whom is going to be selected to negotiate a host community agreement is done in a fair and even-handed manner. My recommendation and suggestion would be that if this bylaw passes and adult recreational use marijuana establishments are allowed to locate in Foxborough, that the Board of Selectmen adopt rules and regulations as the chief executive officer of the town for a process to vet applicants for host community agreements, establish the interview process, some criteria for reviewing and analyzing the prospective applicants. I've done this in another community. They adopted a complete list of criteria that they use when interviewing marijuana establishment applicants. The Board of Selectmen would, in that set of rule and regulations, establish itself as the signatory to the host community agreement, if that is the town's desire. It is the standard and most usual practice for sure. So that would cover the procedural aspect of it, as Paige had noted. The planning board would issue the special permit, obviously. That would be governed by this bylaw with the criteria set forth therein. The local approvals, including in our case, the special permit, is a prerequisite to a final license being issued by the Cannabis Control Commission. And it's up to the town whether or not to issue that special permit, just as it's up to the town, hypothetically, in the judgment of the Board of Selectmen, as to whether or not to execute a host community agreement with any particular applicant. Therein lies the basis for local control. Otherwise, as Paige said, this is very much so a state licensing process, and the state does maintain fairly stringent controls over the issuance of these licenses.
Thank you. So that's my basic presentation for now. I guess I would open it to questions at this point.
Does Mr. Uden have anything to add to the conversation?
I'm just listening, but thank you for your courtesy in asking me. Thank you.
So can I just have another question for Attorney Costello, and just a clarification? I know that he mentioned that medical is not part of this particular thing, but I want to avoid any misconception at town meeting that when we say, okay, based on the current information we have, that 2 stores would be allowed, and now somewhere down the road, a medical facility for retail wants to come in, that people don't feel like, oh, you said 2, and now there's 3 or 4. They don't want to feel like they were misled. So I don't know how we address that, or if we even should address that, but I just want to put it out there so that there's no misconceptions on the part of the body at town meeting feeling like they didn't get full information.
Now, that's a very good point. And I guess the easiest way to explain that is that medical marijuana treatment centers, MTCs they're called, are, from a statutory perspective and from the state regulatory perspective, are entirely separate and distinct from marijuana establishments, which are adult use recreational establishments. The criteria at the state level for issuing licenses or for registering medical facilities are entirely different. Medical marijuana is not subject to the taxes that adult use recreational facilities are. So from the local perspective and from our town meeting's perspective, when we go forward with these articles, is going to be, we're going to focus on this particular bylaw that is before you tonight, relates only to adult use recreational marijuana. And under the proposed bylaw language, we are obligated by law to allow at least 2 based on the percentage of alcohol licenses that we issue in the town.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I don't have any questions.
From the moderator?
I'd just like to echo what Jeff's been saying with regard to informing the townspeople and town meeting when you get there. A lot has been going on, and less than 2 months to get this done. And the example I keep thinking about is, initially, everybody said it's 25% of your package store, thinking it's, just the all alcohol. And we only had one, retail possible. And also, there was talk that there was only one, cultivation possible. Both were wrong. I think Page is the one that finally really ran it down to say it's both, beer and wine and all package. And it's not 25%, it's 20%. So that we have two. And for example, as Attorney Costello said, if the town then asks for an additional package store license through legislation, and we get it, then we're gonna have three. Because in the rules and regulations, if I'm not incorrect, Page, you round up. So there's a lot of information out there that we need to get out there, and there's been some misinformation, which is really concerning initially. And we've been trying to do a lot in a short period of time. So I just wanted to echo what Jeff was saying with regard to town meeting and getting the information out. And I'd like to applaud Paige for everything she's been doing with getting that information out there. And I thought that was very good, what was there tonight. It's a very good first start with regard to that, and the zoning is it's a big part of it, but also how the town is going to do the negotiations with any prospective, applicant.
Well, I think that's critically important, only because this is coming through the form of a zoning article without really the other part of it being, put out there for voters. We're not gonna have a ballot question, we've already established that, unless it was just to limit the number of licenses, but just in terms of more generally speaking, we won't be going that route. So, I mean, for everyone out there who's voting, the only thing they're gonna care about the zoning is the overlay map. They're not gonna care about anything else, they're not gonna care about the special permit process. What they're gonna care about is, so how does this happen?
And how many are there possible out there?
So I think that's why it's important, even though technically you wouldn't go that route for a zoning article at town meeting, just to kind of have that, some sort of presentation, which brings me to a procedural question. Normally you would have the chairman of the planning board be making a little report.
Technically, you have to.
Right.
In the state law, the planning board has to do a report with regard to all zoning, so that will be required.
Right.
But if you're talking about a real presentation.
Well, I was talking about the report first, yeah.
So that'll be required, but also with regard to, technically you could say, with regard to putting together a discussion of how applications would be come in for the retail.
Right.
In theory, at least, you could say that's beyond zoning and should not be discussed under that zoning article. But I will allow it because it's a big part of whether
Well, I
someone
think
wants to say
one way
yes
you
or
can do
no.
that is because we've combined those two articles, for the purposes of.
It's all zoning, though.
Expediency, I guess.
Well, it's all zoning, and you had to combine those two because one couldn't pass, one
No,
failed.
I understand.
So,
Right.
but that was still zoning. But the question is, the process with which
Right.
the selectmen are going to determine who gets the retail licenses. Technically, that's not under zoning.
Right.
And, as moderator, I could say, that's not for discussion here. But I think it's an important part with regards to the overall idea of, do we want this in our
It's the
zoning?
most important part, really.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And I think it would be helpful, based on Frank's comments, to give some context as to why this does appear to be rushed. Well, first of all, I was out of the office for 7 weeks, so that was, a setback. Gabby in this department had their hands full and doing a lot of other things. So when I got back, this was my top priority. But also that it kind of came up to us, there was an applicant who approached the town and kind of highlighted the revenue possibilities for the town. And Bill, you correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but, and that sort of raised the awareness for us. You know, I personally have not been paying attention to marijuana since we banned it in 2017. I'm like, good, something I don't have to read all this stuff. So it was a quick crash course for all of us. And the reason why we're kind of feeling like we should do it now is that, first of all, fall town meeting, you know, we all see what that is. 100 people show up. It just doesn't seem the right forum to bring something really important to. I mean, we saw what with the accessory apartments. We heard the contact about that, and we heard that. So I think we were hesitant to push it to the fall. And then if we wait for another year, you know, you see the communities around us reaping the financial benefits. So the fear is, and we know it's going to take a year or two probably to get anything open. So this is really, it does appear rushed. There is a little bit of that just because we're trying to not miss the market. And it may be that the townspeople vote that, you know, we don't want to do that, and that's totally fine. But we as a town staff have been sort of scrambling, and we admit it hasn't been fully elegant the whole time as we do this, as we figure it all out. It's all new to all of us. We haven't paid any attention to this. But I saw something like a 1.5 million number pass by. I don't know if you saw that, Frank, at one point. So there have been significant numbers out there passed, and, you know, with the fiscal situation and seeing the lack of impacts that we're seeing in Sharon and hearing from Brookline, we started to feel that this is something that it would be beneficial to kind of push it now, but we could delay it, but that's the context of why we're doing it. Bill, do you have anything you want to add to that? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm still not used to working this way, so still trying to figure it out. So, you know, you did it really well, Paige, said it really well. I think the thing that was most convincing to me that we probably need to start sooner rather than later is that even if we would have passed this fall, or this spring rather, it would take at least another year before you would see the process completed, probably even longer, because of the nature of the process through the state, getting all the applicants in, sifting through the different proposals, and knowing how much process-oriented this endeavor is. It's going to take a while. So I think this is really the first step. It's an important step, no question. But I do think that, you know, we did get active on this when we were approached first. We actually were approached about a year and a half ago to start thinking about it, but nobody really had an appetite for it until finally somebody just came forward with a proposal to say, hey, let's start thinking about it. You know, what do you think about this? And then the issue was whether or not it made sense for that person to go forward with the concept in mind. And it was that the concern was that that person go through the process and they sponsor the process, they might not actually get the license in the end. So it made better sense for the town to be the advocate for this, and then to sponsor it and make sure it was done the way the town wanted it, as opposed to an applicant. So I think this is the right approach. It is rushed, admittedly, a little bit because of the nature of how it came forward. And of course, you know, timing wasn't great because, of course, Paige was out during that period of time. She would normally take the lead in these things, but when she came back, she got right to it and really was helpful in trying to pick up some of the pieces. So I do appreciate her efforts here and everything, and everybody's cooperation. I think the two boards have worked really, really well together on this, and of course Pat's help on this has been really, really helpful. So even the police chief and Paige alluded to this earlier, who was really not very much in favor of this initially, has come around because he's talked to his counterparts in the communities where this has taken place and found that the impact has really been very, very minimal. And that to the point where I think Brookline has had, I think, 4 stores in the community right now, and they said the impact has really been minimal. So as Paige pointed out, we did get some really good information from them, and they gave us a few things to watch out for, which has been reflected in the documents you see.
Yeah, and I think, Bill, the point that triggered it for us, and I think it was January, it was the first time we heard of this, was Sharon. I think it kind of hit home when Sharon had they have cultivation and retail, and you don't really even know it. And a little town, I was kind of like, if a town like Sharon's doing it and having no problems, what about Foxborough? So I think that was sort of between being approached and seeing a neighbor that we can relate to, sort of not have an impact and adopt it. It was kind of eye-opening to the sort of powers that be, and that's why I think there was a little more appetite this time.
Steve, you have something you wanted to add?
Good evening, thank you all. I have zero appetite for this, and I will oppose this at town meeting if allowed to go to the mic. I've been to several meetings, not caught all of them, but up to this minute, except for facility placement, I have not one person talk about the effect on the students and children in our community. And I'm going to come in like a fire rocket on that at town meeting. Who is the person or organization that is trying to punch a hole into our process, which we've already established? I can't find an answer in the paper, in minutes, on the TV shows that we broadcast of all our boards. Who's asking for this? People keep going, we were approached. We want to know if we have an appetite. Our town manager, who I have great respect for, Bill, you know that, are using this vague term. Who the hell is it? And if we can't, whoever the we are, and I'm an elected official on a school committee, and I know we always can't say who because of one rule or another, but who the hell is it?
I actually don't have the name.
We don't know?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
neither
the
do I,
answer,
Steve. So-
Bill?
I don't have that name, Steve, so.
But
I-
Leah must.
And
She-
either way,
she brought it up last
technically,
week.
they're not an applicant because they haven't made an application to the town. They've only made an inquiry about it. This, there was I don't even know the firm's name. They actually approached and came in and asked a few questions about it and asked if, if there was an interest in the town and looking at this issue and gave us some information to look at. But they're not an applicant. And they may be an applicant at some point in time, but they're not an applicant before the town.
So a generic human being walked in, called, text, ESP'd, mailed a letter, whatever, and asked if we had an appetite, and we don't know who the hell that person is. Is that correct?
But what difference does that make, Steve?
I want to know who's trying to come into our town and get
Article
pot
is
to our
see if the
kids,
town
Gary.
has an appetite
Huh?
for allowing this. All this article is to see if the town has an appetite to allow it.
That's right. And
We
do we
don't
need
have
a
to have an
two-thirds
applicant
vote to
lined up.
pass this thing?
Pass the zoning, yes.
Two-thirds vote required. So A, I still don't have an answer to my initial question. People won't look at my eyeballs right now while I'm talking. Okay?
No
looking
one's-
at your
No one's
eyeballs.
trying to hide from you.
I'm looking.
All right.
I
I'm
don't
just
have a
saying.
name.
I'm just
We
saying.
like you.
I'm just saying, I like all of you. We all get along. We all know each other. We've known each other for years. I don't park in front of fire hydrants, and we've bought each other coffee at Cumberland Farms. I get it. But I have a nauseous appetite for this, and I'm no saint. I'm not a perfect man, but I don't want this near my town. We've already established it. I thank you all for your time. I didn't get an answer to my question. I think it's evasive that I didn't get an answer to my question, and we'll see everybody at town meeting. Thank you. I love you all.
Can I, for a minute, Mr.
Sure,
Matt?
go ahead, Kevin. I mean, I'm sorry, let the chair.
Got an opportunity to hear Attorney Costello earlier. It really wouldn't make any difference who this individual is if they didn't meet the criteria, and that the state has, been very stringent on, what criteria we're allowed to use. They may not even qualify. So in that sense, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with your perspective on this. I'm just saying even on that basis, they may not be a winning applicant, or they may not qualify for whatever the reasons are that come under the state's regulation.
But but Kevin, we sure have a lot of people working on it, spending our town money working on it right now, Kevin.
I can't hear you. I missed
We sure have a lot of people working on it internally, including producing PowerPoint presentations, visiting other communities, running financial analysis for somebody we don't even know who the heck it is.
This is the point.
Chasing a
for
buck.
that somebody.
Chasing a buck.
It is that it is not for that somebody. I think that we need to make that clear. That somebody may have planted a seed, but there's no obligation or requirement or any assumption that that individual may or may not even meet the criteria to be approved. So, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think it's on behalf of any individual who's, as you would say, is trying to punch a hole in our community. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree with your perspective, concerning the children or anything else. I don't think that just because we're addressing this, that you're making a presumption that there will be a positive or negative vote at town meeting, or we're trying to leverage a vote at town meeting.
I'm not implying that at all. I just want to know who is the genesis of the revitalization of this issue, and our town employees are spending money researching it. It's a ghost.
I can tell you, I just got some information. It was the owners of Tenanet Road approached us.
What is that, a company or
No, it's a street,
location?
it's an address, and it's a location in town.
Tenanet Road? I'm sorry, I don't know how to spell that.
Annette, the name Annette?
Oh, Annette, like
Yeah.
Annette Funicello.
Yes.
10 Annette Road. Okay. Thank you very much.
I did not have that
They-
information.
No,
till now.
Paige, I'm not
Yeah,
trying to
I did not-
imply
I
there's
haven't
any
found
kind of
it either.
malfeasance going on here.
Well, you did imply that, but.
No,
it's
I
like-
didn't. I said I hadn't heard anybody say who it is, and that it was constantly said that someone applied. I didn't imply that there's any
Said I wouldn't look
malfeasance.
you in the eye, and that made me feel that you were.
I'm sorry.
So-
I was working the room, okay? And you were looking at something else.
At my phone.
But I did not imply that there's any malfeasance.
Steve, it's all very innocent. Now, I'll tell you how this ball got rolling.
All right.
So the individual at Tenanet Road approached the town about doing some cultivation and/or retail up
Yeah.
on that road, and showed the town individuals, I'm not exactly sure who was there, but, you know, town manager eventually got information on it and showed how much money, revenue, the town could get from it. And they were very interested in it at that point. But they said, you should go out and hire an attorney to try to write the zoning. That individual contacted me and came to see me about hiring.
Uh-huh.
I declined. The reason I declined was I told him that even if I wrote it and we got it passed at town meeting, he wasn't guaranteed to get it. And at that point, the assumption that he told me was that there was one retail available. And I said, you know, there will be a number of entities that will try to get to that. So I declined it, and I advised him to go back to the town and say, it's not gonna be in anyone's interest to write it. It really should be the town to do it. He went back to the town and told them that, you know, that he wasn't gonna spend thousands of dollars.
Right. He
in the
wasn't
event
for
that
free.
He was never gonna get it.
Right.
At that point, my assumption is, and I found out later, that the town then really started looking into it and decided, because of the revenue it could possibly generate, that they thought it was in the town's best interest to look into it, bring it forward, and have it vetted. Now, it's gonna be vetted through the selectmen, it's gonna be vetted through the planning board, eventually be vetted through the advisory committee, and eventually it'll get to town meeting if it's decided to be moved forward that way. And the ultimate decision will be at town meeting. So none of these people, you know, nobody said, let's do this. There's no, you know, underlining.
I'm not saying there's a conspiracy.
and all
I just
that.
said there's been constant absence of
You know,
information that's important to
I
me
think-
and others in the public, I know.
I think the town officials, you know, did the right thing in looking at it and saying, this is something we should present to the town and see if they want it, yes or no. Because as you can see, other towns all around us are doing it. And again, as Mr. Weinfeld said, you know, I'm not advocating for or against it, but I think it is a subject that at this time, people want to bring forward to town meeting and see if they're for or against it. You're against it. I absolutely understand your reasoning for it, you know, and we'll see what the town itself does. You know, a lot of discussion had to go into whether we had to do another ballot question to undo that first question. And I got calls on that, and I looked into that and talked with Mr. Cutler and others. And I know Attorney Costello looked into it, and it was decided, no, you do not have to. And if you read the language of it, you know, you don't have to go back and change that. So they're trying to do, and my caution throughout this was, let's not try to run this thing through too fast. And I really thought it was getting pushed too fast. But I'm getting a better feeling about it. Paige has done a lot of work since she's come back. That presentation tonight, you know, I've had a few discussions with her, you know, about it on the phone or out in the hall with the different issues going on. You know, how many retails are really there? How many cultivations can you do? And things like that. And to make sure the zoning is the best. So there's nothing underlying here.
I'm not
They're bringing it
indicating a
forward.
conspiracy theory.
And
I'm not.
at the end of the day, it'll be up to the townspeople to decide yes or no. And again, it requires 2/3.
Yes.
You know, and I understand why they want to bring it to the annual. You know, that's the big one. You're going to get more people there. You're going to get more discussion. You're going to get more airing of it.
Put a 1 in front of all those dollar figures, and I still don't want it because of how it could affect the children in our community. I don't want the money grab. Thank you. I think we all mutually like or love each other down the line here in town, and maybe I shouldn't have had that cup of coffee before I went to the mic.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, good night, thank you. Thanks.
Good night. Thank
Nice, Steve.
I actually think this was a really helpful conversation, so thank you, even though.
I'll be recalled tomorrow.
I don't think so. But no, I think this is, you're probably speaking what other people have been watching this rather indelicate process as we've struggled a bit through this. You know, so this way, I think this was a great conversation, and I think, Frank, you offered some great context, and Bill, so I think this has been helpful to kind of show where we're at and why it looks like we don't know what we're doing. We kind of don't, but that's where we're pulling all our resources and trying to, you know, deliver the best information to the town, and however, like, none of us really cares whether this passes. I mean, honestly, I've worked really hard on it. I don't care. I mean, it was easier when we didn't do it because I didn't have to do all this research, but now that I've done it, it's like, okay, so. I think I've said enough on it.
Pull the warrant. No wasting more time.
Any board members have any further questions on this? Kevin, you have anything?
No, I just was hearing what Frank said earlier about the report, and I'm, you know, either I'm comfortable with making the report and reassuring people that, you know, it's been in conjunction with, you know, the selectmen and their role, the town manager and his potential role, the advisory committee and their role, depending on how they vote themselves, and the planning board in terms of trying to create the best zoning process that we can in order to have controls over this. And then again, but the final analysis, as Frank just said, is that it's going to be up to the body. The town meeting will make its decision known.
Right. And I will say about the children thing, because, you know, I've been doing a little bit of research. I totally get it. And as a mom of 2 who are older but not quite old enough, I guess 2 points is, one, it's already there. I mean, it's next door, it's everywhere. So the kids are probably already getting it. You have to be 21 and older, but so I'm sure they're somehow getting it in some way. But the other thing, as a mom, I've had to think about this is, honestly, I would rather my children, my 2 boys, they're 19 and 23, I would rather them buy a joint from a marijuana facility, like off the street, you know, whatever, because they're not, if my 19-year-old, than from some drug dealer who's not regulated. So again, it's you don't want your kids ever buying a joint, but if they were going to, at least the stuff that's going through the retailers is tested and safe. And so as a mom, what I worry about is like a fentanyl lace joint or something. So that's my non-scientific, but I'm like, again, I don't want my kids to do it, but I do have fear about the untested out there. And I wonder if, you know, I don't know that this is going to result in more of the higher grade stuff out there, but I don't know.
Have a glass of orange juice and talk sometime.
Sounds good.
Some very interesting stories for you.
So thank you.
If I could just say one final word on the issue and why it's important to consider this is that, you know, it's my obligation to always bring forward opportunities where we can increase local revenue. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be doing my job either. So I think it's really important that when somebody suggests something to me and then we start taking a look at it and see how much of an impact it is, what really made up my mind that this is really something we should pursue was when the report came out, and I think it was December or January, saying that the revenue from marijuana sales actually surpassed alcohol sales. And I think that's a significant milestone in that respect. So by looking at that perspective, you can have your position relative to whether you think you like the concept or not. That's one thing. I think the issue is, it's actually legal all around us. And the question is Foxborough interested in participating in that or not? And the answer is going to be up to the community to decide. It's really up to them to decide, and not for me or Paige to do that. It's our responsibility to put the information in front of you.
Thank you, Bill. I respect the heck out of you. I really do. I understand.
Thank you.
It's an uneasy place to be.
You know, Frank, you might want to remind people or remind folks, either at town meeting or, you know, beforehand in some way, literature that in a more normal time, like we did back in 2017, even though it was a non-binding question, it was set up on the ballot. And that came very close to passing. Now, it was non-binding, but it was a very narrow margin of defeat. Or actually, it was for a ban, so it was a
Well,
affirmative
Are you
vote.
talking about the one that was with the zoning?
Yeah,
With the zoning with the medical marijuana? Well,
Yes.
see, you had to pass that.
no.
Otherwise,
No, we had a non-binding ballot question.
well, it's considered non-binding, but under the way the state statute was written, if you didn't put that ballot question, and Pat Costello probably could answer this better than I, if you didn't put that in front of the town meeting, then it was allowed. If you didn't put that ballot question in front of not town meeting, on the ballot question
Yep.
for the voters, and if, you know,
Yes, yes,
then,
right.
then
My only
marijuana would have
point-
been allowed.
My only point was, that was just a straight majority vote, and it was very, very close. And now there's going to be a much higher threshold
Right.
for positive action. So, I mean, I don't think we have to apologize about anything.
No.
No.
All right, well, next conversation will be
Motion
at
to
the
adjourn.
The selectmen will be discussing this matter at their meeting Tuesday night, so just stay tuned, more fun.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. So you have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Done.
Done.